Hi, this is Dr. Randy Bach. I'm here with the Newton Taxpayers Association, and we look out for you because, frankly, essentially, everything that happens in Newton from city government is by virtue and on your behalf, theoretically, but clearly you're paying for it. And hopefully you're paying for it in the right way. And we have various concerns across the board, not just how much taxes we pay, but for what and to what purpose and to what end. And I'm going to have some help with me today. Al Cechinelli, who is running for mayor. This is an odd year in a few different ways, I guess. Numerically, it's 2025, so you divide by 2, you come up with a remainder of 1, and here we are. So every 4 of those, we have a mayoral election. And so this year, it's going to apparently be Mark Laredo, and Al Cechinelli is running as well. I think it's a nonpartisan election, so they all kind of wind up in the soup, and then 2 come out, and then they have a super election or something like that. Anyway, he'll explain that. But primary, no pun intended, we have a secondary story, which may be primary for the primaries because it played out in the current mayor, our, I guess, lame duck, Ruth Ann Fuller. I wouldn't call her that to her face, but maybe she technically is. A lame duck, that is, not either one individually. But in the middle of the night, when many ducks are, I guess, home and quiet, she endeavored, through her proxies at the, I guess, DPW, to paint yellow the historically, red, green, and white stripes signifying the Italian heritage of Nonantum. And she did up and down Adams Street, or not she particularly, but her administration did. And maybe that's something for safety, as we hear later. That people are going to be so incredibly confused by Adams Street having not as ordinary red, green, and yellow stripes, which have caused, I don't know, probably no additional accidents over the years. But now they got, at least temporarily, they had the standard double yellow lines. But this is right on the cusp of the is it St. Carmen?
St. Mary of Carmen's
Thank you.
90th anniversary of their festa.
Thank you. So the 90th anniversary of St. Mary of Carmen.
Yep.
Festival for Italian. And why now? Why this moment? Why there? So that's a long intro. Al is a friend of mine, and he's run previously. We're hoping to see more of Al. And we're actually happy to see any of Al because he just emerged from a bit of a health scare. And comedian that he is, he mentioned that he had an adenoma, and it's apparently benign, so we're happy about that. But the doctor's very concerned. He said, look, I don't want you to adenoma, I want you to take one away. Boom. And so with his customary verve and aplomb and humor, he's here with us today. Thank you, Al. Sorry for the long introduction.
Well, thank you for having me, Randy. I always enjoy being on Taxpayer Talk. And I think that it's important that we talk about the lines because I think this is more than just about lines. We've seen a systematic disrespect for the Nonantum section of Newton for years now. With the removal of Nonantum from the city seal, the removal of Columbus Day, a national day recognizing Italian Americans after the largest single mass lynching in American history, which occurred down in Louisiana when a bunch of Italian Americans were lynched. They took it away and made a third Native American Day. So 2 weren't enough, 3 were better, but I don't begrudge them having 3 days. But did they need to take our day away to give them an extra day? The Nonantum Fire Station used to have the red line flag in it, and the mayor made them remove it. What they did was the power transformers outside of the station, where a lot of them are painted, had a decal of the red line flag. She recently made them remove that. And then when the Mass MBTA put through their Communities Act, and they wanted to allow pretty much unfettered development around rail stations in the cities and towns, in the neighborhoods that hosted rail stations. The city council and the mayor tried to make it so that every village center would have these same rules. And we came together as a village and said we're not interested in 5 and 6 story high density developments in our village center. We're a neighborhood. We have character. We want to keep our character, and they don't like that. And I think that I don't think that they want us to be as strong and as united as we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem.
You know, I second that. How does second that emotion? How does that song go?
You're not getting me to sing.
Okay, well, we could get you to sing.
If I hadn't had the surgery through my sinuses, you might have got me to play my trombone, but I'm not singing.
Fair enough. So I second that emotion in a sense. You know, I had a show on that aspect of the rail lines, you know, the high density apartments and so forth. I actually like growth organically. I don't think it should be dictated from above, and in particular the way they're doing it. And I also think that the city shouldn't, you know, kind of grant, and frankly the state kind of forced a lot of this also. So it's not all the city, forced the kind of variances push in these city centers at train stations. But I want to point out that it wasn't every train stop that got affected. Somehow, mysteriously, Chestnut Hill, and what's the train stop closest to the mayor's residence, Al?
Would that be Elliott Street?
I think it's actually Chestnut Hill.
Oh, okay.
So the Chestnut Hill and Elliott stops were both exempted from the high density. So Woburn, high density. Newton Center, high density. So a lot of the other stops, I'm not going to name them all, but our listeners at home may. All the other stops had this primatur, Oak Hill and whatnot, of having high density, but not Chestnut Hill, and not, I believe, Elliott was the second one that somehow just disappeared from them. But Riverside and all the other ones, they have that you know, outstanding. And of course, Nonantum doesn't have a train stop there, so this is kind of a non sequitur. But you know, I do notice you know, our differences in attire today. I was wondering. I actually went down to with the AC. Is that what that says? The AK?
It says the lake.
Yeah, I know. I just saw the middle. So the lake. You know, I got to say, years and years ago, I was living not in Newton, probably 40 years ago. I was living in Boston, and I had directions to go someplace, and I had a map of Newton, and on the way back, I thought, oh, I'm going to go look at this Silver Lake, because it was on the map, and it was just a beautiful day, and I thought, you know, maybe skip some rocks or something like that, and I circled around, I couldn't find, it was on this, it was a paper map before GPS, and the lake is not there. So it's kind of funny thing, it was filled in, it's behind a few residences and warehouses and whatnot. But the term the lake persists, and so does the iconography. So I actually bicycled down to the procession yesterday, so I saw it as it was leading up. It was a hot day, but people were sitting out on the stoops, and some of the families were dressed really nicely, as if they're going to church. In a sense, it's a religious affair because they bring. You can tell me exactly what we call that.
That's the Madonna.
The Madonna through the streets, and there's music, and there's a huge kind of Liberty Bell being rung, and it's. I had not seen that aspect of it. I'd seen it at the fair at certain times, and I'd gone over the years, and there's a lot of fun at the fair at Pellegrini Park, if that's the name of it.
Yes, it is.
But you know, the procession itself was a fascinating moment. I mean, I have to say. And you know, with all due respect, it was you know, kind of a touching moment. And you know, nobody's being harmed. Everyone's kind of being happy. They're kind of getting along together. And this seems like a moment of harmony, not to be discouraged. And if it was so important, you know, over the last 90 years or whatever, I'm not sure how long they've been doing the stripes, but at least for decades that I've been here, it was so important to get rid of that, you know, at some point. Why was there no discussion, and why couldn't it have been done, you know, in the light of day rather than, you know, dark of night?
Yeah, I reached out to the mayor, and she had told me that they had been on a wait list. There are 2 companies that do long lines in the state. Our own DPW does not do long lines, and they didn't just paint the lines, but they grinded the old paint off of the road. And that was a machine that not a lot of people also have. And we had been on the list, and they said that they could fit us in. Well, 3 weeks before the festa is not a time to be doing this with no input from the community. It rang so disingenuous that, you know, doing in the darkness of the night, this big machine throwing up dust on a very hot night that a lot of people had their windows open, you know, throwing the dust into the air, waking people, no police detail for the work being done, and they were driving through the middle of the road with this machine to grind the stripes. And then they put down a reflective paint that was heat treated to not allow other paint to paint over it. Not sure, but I would probably guess that nowhere else in our city has that kind of paint.
Right. So, was there any informing of the locals that this was going to occur? Did anybody know this in advance?
Well, she had said that in her negotiations with the St. Mary of Carmen Society that she wanted them to agree not to paint the lines. But the St. Mary of Carmen Society does not paint the lines. It's all done by the community. So she might have told them she didn't want the lines painted, but they weren't the people that did it. So there was no prior forethought with the community, with the people that did it. So it was a surprise to everybody.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The question that might come up is, well, okay, I mean, you know, everyone likes Italian food. We like Italians. They're great citizens, lots of fun, and you know, respectful, and you know, pretty much law-abiding and whatnot. I think they're exemplary citizens of Newton historically, and pretty much across the country. The very little, you know, we hear of Italian crime. You know, we hear about the mafia and all that kind of stuff, but that's kind of relegated to TV shows for the most part currently. I think mafia crime, you know, is kind of an MS-13, whatnot. You know, anyway, there's been, you know, the turf's been taken over by other groups, and so, but let's say, you know, some other group painted lines. Let's say it was, you know, Hamas stripes, or as we saw, there was all these BLM, you know, kind of like painting entire streets with Black Lives Matters and that kind of stuff, and or if it's a pride crosswalk. I mean, how do we feel about kind of taking over the public square in general, you know, and how does this case kind of differ or have an asterisk for it?
Well, I think that if any of those things had been done, painted by those groups, that the mayor would have welcomed it. I remember a couple years ago when they had the anti-Israel photography exhibit at the Newton Library, and it was just, I don't know how that slipped past. Yeah, the guy had some beautiful photos, but the entire premise of the exhibit was that Israel were occupiers and trying to commit genocide, when Hamas is the problem in Gaza.
Right.
I think that sadly we're on the wrong track here in Newton. You know, the mayor had said that federal guidelines require that this was done because of 6,000 cars a day passing on that road. Well, the average actually of the study was 4,400 cars a day. There were 2 days that were higher than the 6,000, just by a little, but they were both days of Catholic devotion, and Our Lady's Parish is on Adams Street. So they had extra masses and people coming to the church for, you know, extra prayer sessions. That should not have triggered this. And if we're so worried about what the federal government tells us we should be doing or we have to do, why aren't we cooperating with ICE? And why are we a welcoming city? Why aren't we requiring people to prove they're citizens when they register to vote, when they register for school, things like that? Or if they're not citizens, they're at least here legally. the state allows illegal aliens to get driver's license. When you get a driver's license, unless you check the box saying you do not want to be enrolled to vote, you're automatically enrolled to vote. They never took care of that in the state level. This is something we should be looking into, not painting over a 90-year tradition 3 weeks before the 90th anniversary.
Yeah, no, I second that emotion again. I have been hanging out, because it's hot, at the Gath pool on occasion. I actually usually go year by year by year, but they were doing construction at one point. They shut down for COVID. And so last year I didn't go for other reasons. But so it's new to me. It was, I guess, opened last year. But I'm only now kind of getting up to speed with what is at the Gath pool. And to your point, it's not so much that they're not favoring kind of ethnic flair or whatnot. It just doesn't happen to be yours. So there's a mural there, which I assume we taxpayers paid for, unless it's free. And I have it on my phone, so I was going to put it up, and it's probably too small for people to see. But you can go to the pool and look at it. Maybe I'll post it someplace. But ethnicity is heralded, in this image, and it's kind of what you expect. There's all kinds of diversity, but not so much really the overwhelming demographic of Newton, which is still, kind of white married couples and so forth, and whatnot. The only white couple in the picture is two men with a baby, and I went to medical school and I was awake for most of it, and I just don't remember that, kind of being a thing so much, but it is at the Gath pool apparently, and that's something to be promoted. And so this thing is, I guess, devotional in a sense. I mean, there are, religious iconography you can find in church. We just came back from Europe and we went to a lot of churches and so forth, a few synagogues as well. But there's iconography. Those are images that are meant to be promoted. And insofar as we have kind of religion in the public sphere, kind of a woke religion, the mural there I think is very instructive. I think people should head over because it's a nice pool and whatnot. They did a marvelous job with the pool itself, I guess. But money, no expense was spared, and we have this mural. There's again, there's all different types. There's Muslim woman. There's like greater than the proportion in Newton of people of color, as it were. There is one heterosexual couple, but they're not kind of like the Newton demographic. So people are always supposed to be comfortable. That looks like me. It doesn't really look like Newton, such as it is, which is okay. That's fine. But it's aspirational. What they are doing is promoting something there, and I guess they're welcome to do that. But then it comes down to a matter of whom they're promoting and why, and whether it is the lake they could have at least not promoted. Kind of gone after in this adversarial way, it seems, as at least, not just the action, but the technique of not really informing the people. I don't know if you have any thoughts or stance on any of that.
Well, I haven't seen the mural. I'm a big fan of public art. We've got a bunch of it down in Onantum, which you people should come down and take a look. Pellegrini Park has a few murals. There's a beautiful mural on Adams Street, almost at Watertown Street. I think that public art is for the betterment of everybody. And there's a large history of people trying to express messages through art. I would never say we shouldn't have messages through art, but I think that we need to have equal footing on who we have doing art and who decides what art is in the city square.
Yeah. So I misspoke slightly. This is not a mural; it's a painting.
Oh, okay.
On the wall. So as you come in on the left wall, there's this painting, and it's probably like 5 feet wide, something like that.
Okay.
On the other wall, they took out part of the men's locker room, and there are two non-gender bathrooms. How do I know the non-gender bathrooms? Because they both say it explicitly. Now, I mean, they could have said just handicap bathroom, something like that. I think that people can kind of construe a handicap bathroom as they will, but it seems again like kind of a blatant thing. This is a non-gendered bathroom. But yet they have an image of a man, a woman, and somebody in a wheelchair. So it's kind of a little mixed message. I was confused. I didn't know where to go to the bathroom. Anyway, but it just seems like in the schools and elsewhere they do message. It just doesn't happen to be the one that's anywhere kind of what used to be the middle. And I guess supposedly now more on the right, but I think the right's moving towards the middle because the left has gone so vituperative and woke in certain ways. So let's segue. I'd like you to kind of give us a sense of what all this meant. It was kind of a news story, I think locally, maybe nationally, about the stripes. I want to hear what your thoughts were about that and how you can generalize some of those thoughts and actions towards your campaign. I'm going to give you a little free rein and try to shut up for a bit.
Well, again, I think that they don't want us here. After Deb Crosley came in as a city councilor and told us what they were going to do for zoning in Nonantum, and we pushed back and she told us, well, if you don't like it, run somebody against me and get me out of office. Well, we ran somebody against her and got her out of office. Then what the mayor did was she went and she appointed her to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So now she's an unelected person in our government that has more power over what zoning decisions are made than she did as a city councilor. After we told the mayor that we didn't want her as a city councilor anymore, she went and appointed her to this board. And that's a slap in our face. I don't think it was right that she gave us the challenge. We rose to the challenge, and they said, well, that's tough. We're going to put her in here anyways. Nonantum, though still expensive, is the least expensive real estate in Newton. So it is going to be much easier for a developer to come in, buy a couple of parcels, put up a 5 or 6 story building with high density housing, and change forever our neighborhood. They're doing it on Craft Street, which is actually, it's in Ward 2, but it's right on the border of Nonantum. They've got 2 buildings that are going to have close to 500 units with less than 400 parking spaces. Where are people going to park? Are people ever going to come visit these people that are living there? Where are they going to park? They don't care. They know that Craft Street, which is one of the top 5 busiest streets and one of the top 5 accident streets in Newton, is going to have thousands more vehicles every day. And they don't care. They're not doing this for the citizens. They're letting the developers strip mine our city. And that's not something I want to see done. If I wanted to live in Brookline, I'd move to Brookline. I'd move into a high-rise in Brookline where I didn't know my neighbors, where there was no yard in my backyard. But that's not how I want to live. I live in Newton, in a neighborhood where I know the people 6 houses down on each side of me. I know the people across the street.
So,
and that's...
So let me just segue. We have just 5 minutes. I want to let you know. And, we'll see how the rounds go in the mayoral, and maybe we'll have you on again if that occurs, if you pass through. But to speak not just as a Lake person, but as a representative of Newton at whole, what's your problem with the current administration? How would you differ from other candidates in changing or keeping whatever Newton is doing well or poorly? What's your vision in 5 minutes?
My vision is that I would be working for the citizens of Newton, not the prospective citizens, not the people that we could feel good about helping. I would be working for Newton. When it comes time for contract negotiations, I would be negotiating for Newton, not for the school committee, not for the teachers union. I would be the representative for the city of Newton's residents. And I don't think that's happening right now. I think that they take us for granted. They see us as a way to get the means to their ends. And right now, we're in the top 5 places in the country to live. But if they have their way and put all the high-density housing in, that's not where people want to live. You know, I get a lot of people that tell me, well, my family can't afford to live in Newton near me. And I said, well, do you think your family's going to want to live in a high-density apartment with no backyard? They're not going to want to live here if we put that kind of housing in. And so I want to help keep Newton the Garden City. We need our green space. We need our open space. What they're doing to the roads is atrocious. The Watertown Street over by Trader Joe's is abysmal.
Yeah.
You cannot get a fire truck into the Marriott.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just poor planning.
No, they do it on ComAv. They have this thing called the road diet. And I actually wrote a blog, it's on my Substack, if people go look for it, Rand Doctor. I think the road diet needs a diet. I think we have to stop spending and wasting money on shriveling our roads. We have some of the grandest roads, ComAv, and they're making it into a little tiny, alley. What are the other? What would be your major, plan as far as enacting some of the things you're talking about? Just a couple minutes we have.
Well, my major plan is to get our schools back on track. I believe Ann and Nolan was a great step in the right direction. But when I graduated high school in 1982, we were one of the top 5 school systems in the country. Now we're not the top 5 in the state. We need to get back to that level of excellence. We need to get back to teaching our children. We need to get the development under control. We need to make special permits special again. It's not a special reason for a special permit shouldn't be the developer needs to make $8 million instead of $6 million. Special permits are for when people need to have their elderly parents move in with them and they need a ramp close to the property line. That's what a special permit should be for. We need to look at those things. We need to make life better for Newton residents.
And when is the election?
Election is the first Tuesday in November, and I'm Al Cechinelli, and I'd appreciate it if you voted for me.
So thank you so much, Al. Is there going to be like a runoff round? I mean, how many candidates are there?
Well, right now, only myself and Mark Laredo have turned in papers. I don't believe anybody else has pulled papers for mayor.
So there won't be a preliminary round?
There should not be.
Oh, so that's interesting. All right. Well, so I remain Randy Bach of the Newton Taxpayers Association. You can find us on Facebook at the Newton Taxpayers Association. You can find me here at Hither and Yon. Please join us, help give us money so that we can help promote the word. We don't endorse candidates per se in the elections. We're going to have Mark Laredo on next month, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for your time and effort and paying attention to us. And thank you, Al, in looking out for the lake and your friends, neighbors, and constituents. So any last words we can squeeze in?
Just thank you for having me. Always appreciate being on New TV.